Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Commander Score Studio. Welcome to the show. So, really quick, if you haven't seen my most recent episode on Portal to Phyrexia, well, check that one out. It is quite a doozy at some point. I mean, I say no way for a reason. But don't check that one out just yet, because you've got to stay tuned for this episode with a brand new card that has me saying, no. You know, like Darth Vader, no, kind of. Yeah, weird choice there, George Lucas. Anyways, blame Eddie for George Lucas and Star Wars mistakes. And yeah, let's jump into it. So, really quick, a big thank you to MTG.design for existing because, well, I created a custom version of this card because the actual, card image that we saw was, I believe, just taken from a camera phone at Magic 30 up on a giant screen, so it's kind of blurry and sideways and whatnot, so here we are, and now I'm actually noticing that I already made a mistake on this one. It's not really all that big of a mistake. This is it's a rare, not a mythic. Anyways, Tocasia? Let's just go with that. Dig, Site, Mentor, a 4/3 Human Artificer for 1, green, white, blue. Creatures you control have Vigilance and tap Surveil 1, so that's spicy, but the spiciness has not stopped just yet, and this is why I am saying no. 2, green, green, white, white, blue, blue. Exile Tocasia, dig, site, Mender from your graveyard. Return any number of target artifact cards with total mana value 10 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Activate only as a sorcery. Oh, no. Please, no. Oh, no. Okay, so I'm not sure if any of you have ever played against eggs, but eggs can be incredibly powerful. I'm not talking about breakfast eggs. Those are incredibly delicious, but eggs in, well, many formats, including Commander, can be a very, very, very powerful thing. I mean, just go check out Alex Brea deck on Close Quarters at some point and just see how incredibly powerful that can be. But yeah, this Commander essentially has you able to just bring back a ton of artifacts from your graveyard, kind of like a Nethroi in a way, like, but not for creatures and not with mutating, but with artifacts and with actually exiling this from your graveyard. So obviously you need to get this in your graveyard and exile it from there to actually get that massive benefit. And again, mana value 10 or less, that can be an absurd amount of artifacts. I mean, there are plenty of artifacts out there that have a mana value of 0, so those don't even count towards this, essentially. And of course, there are plenty of fantastic ones at 1 mana, I mean, like Soul Ring, and of course, a lot of other, ones we're going to talk about here in a bit. But yeah, basically, this is a mass recursion commander that also just happens to have a fantastic static effect on it as well, giving your creatures vigilance, which can be very, very good. I mean, being able to just attack away with your commander or with your creatures without having to worry about that and keep them back for, defense is great. And then also being able to just tap them to surveil 1. While that is not card advantage, it is a massive amount of card selection, and it kind of also just is card advantage with this commander again, because let's say you can make a lot of creature tokens or whatnot, especially artifact creature tokens, and you'll see why those can be even more beneficial here in a bit. But yeah, have them tap to surveil 1 a ton, dump a ton of artifacts in your graveyard, get your commander in your graveyard, and then just utilize this to get everything, well, not everything, but maybe everything, but a lot of things out of your graveyard back into play for a ton of value. So yeah, this can be an incredibly powerful eggs commander with the right build. And yes, of course, also, it doesn't have to be built in that direction. This can be built in a lot of different ways. This one can be just a very fantastic kind of value-centric commander that is working towards, utilizing creatures, giving them vigilance. Maybe there's a lot of Mandorks in there too. You can swing away. You can also have them, tap to surveil 1 so you can actually just kind of see what's on top. Maybe you've got like Future Sight as well, so you can actually, utilize the cards that are on top of your library. You can, take those away and still be able to cast other ones. But yeah, when it comes to the fears that I have for this commander, it's eggs. It is eggs. I'm afraid of eggs, not the breakfast food, but eggs with commander. Anyways, if you are interested in this commander, and if you're interested in building around this way, potentially, yeah, make sure you definitely check out my list in the description below with the cards I'm talking about on this episode. And now with all that said, let's jump into it. And I guess I probably should have explained eggs earlier, but I mean, it's probably easier with a visual, right? So, hey, Skycloud egg, Sungrass egg, these are eggs. And yeah, when you talk about, eggs in Magic, this is kind of what you're referring to, cards like these. Now, these are very simple cards, but they can inspire and, be part of some incredible decks out there. Again, Alex Egg's deck, check it out at some point. An artifact for 1 that basically has pay to tap, sacrifice it, add, well, in Skycloud Egg's case, white, blue to your mana pool, draw a card. Sungrass does basically the exact same thing, but it's going to be giving you green, white. Now, basically, at their core, these eggs are essentially just low to the ground, 1-mana artifacts that can filter your mana and draw you a card. Now, the term egg can be applied to a lot of different things. We'll get to some other examples here in a bit, but basically, hey, these are artifacts that can kind of just replace themselves in a way and maybe give you another little benefit, again, like filtering your mana. Now, that might not seem like a lot, and on their own, they really aren't really all that good. But when you have a ton of them, and you've got ways to recur them, like, this brand new commander that just happens to have an ability that you can, exile from your graveyard and get a ton of these back. Just imagine getting 10 eggs back. Now, there actually, aren't 10 eggs that you've got access to. And actually, I think there's only even 5 eggs, 2 color pairings. Anyways, more eggs, Wizards, maybe not. Anyways, just pretend you're getting back, 10 essentially 1-mana artifacts that basically work in the exact same way. Well, you can get an absurd amount of value out of that because, again, you basically just keep filtering your mana. I mean, it only costs you, let's just say, again, 2 mana to activate that first egg. Then you filter your mana. You use that mana that you got to then activate the other egg, to activate the other one, to activate the other one. Then you just essentially just drew 10 cards. You essentially just got your commander to get all of this back. You sacrifice it all, essentially, you draw a ton of cards, and I'm sure you've got other ways to gain benefits from them too. We'll talk about some of those here in a bit. But yeah, there are some very, very powerful things that you can do with all of this. Speaking of other eggs, or egg-like cards, let's just say, Chromatic Sphere is somewhat similar. Pay 1, tap, sacrifice, add 1 mana of any color, draw a card. So whereas the other eggs, again, require you to pay 2, but they filter that mana into specific colors, this one's more so like, no, I mean, just give me 1 mana, I'll give you whatever you want back, draw a card as well. Again, these are basically kind of like cantripping artifacts in a way. They replace themselves, and they can provide you a ton of value, again, when you're able to just keep getting them back again and again and again. Or how about Conjurer's Bauble, which doesn't require any mana to actually sacrifice it. Tap, sacrifice it, put up to 1 target card from your graveyard on the bottom of your library, draw a card. Now, keep in mind, again, that is up to 1, so you don't have to put any, which, again, is probably important because, yeah, I mean, if you're just filling your, graveyard with a ton of artifacts, you probably don't want to get those artifacts on the bottom of your library. You want to keep them there so your commander and other effects can get them back out for you. But again, the most important part is 1 mana artifact, very low to the ground, can just essentially replace itself by drawing you a card. Or how about Implement of Ferocity, which goes about in a different way. You can pay a green to sacrifice to get a counter on target creature. Activate only time you cast a sorcery. Yeah, that part's really not all that, you don't really care about that counter, most likely, but still, it's a way to sacrifice it. When it's put in a graveyard from the battlefield, draw a card. So, most importantly, again, this replaces itself. Now, this one specifically is not giving you any mana back, but that's where some other things, maybe one very specific thing, comes into play as well. That can be a just absurd piece of value for an Eggs deck. And that would be a card like Krark Clan Ironworks. I mean, this thing is just absurd. Here we go. Sacrifice an artifact, add colorless to your mana pool. This, of course, is a free sacrifice outlet for any of your artifacts, and it gives you free mana. So, yeah, you can generate an absurd amount of mana in a single turn with this. And again, when utilizing cards, like, again, that Implement of Ferocity, you can just freely sacrifice it instead of actually having to pay mana to do so. And you get to draw that card because, again, it has that trigger when it's been engraved from the battlefield, draw a card. So basically, hey, you get 2 free mana and you draw a card. So, yeah, once you're set up properly with an Eggs deck, you can do some absolutely crazy things. And again, with, again, the original eggs like Skycloud Egg or Sungrass Egg, you don't actually have to utilize them, again, for that filtering and draw function. If you are, drawing enough cards and you've got, enough cards maybe in your graveyard, enough cards in your hand, and you just want mana, just start sacrificing them with this to generate an absurd amount of mana and do some crazy things in your turn. And yeah, with all that mana filtering that you can do, one of those crazy things is, of course, very easily activate your commander when it's in your graveyard to get everything back and then do it again. And yeah, just generate absurd amounts of value throughout the game. And especially in one big explosive turn that is going to be game ending. Next up, some other examples that are somewhat similar to our commander's ability, but in different ways. Second Sunrise is a great one in a deck like this. Each player returns to play all artifact, creature, enchantment, and land cards put in their graveyard from play this turn. Now, obviously, this could benefit your opponents, and it might ever so slightly, but it's definitely going to be benefiting you the most, again, when you build your entire deck around, you know, basically cracking a ton of eggs, and yeah, just getting them back again and again and again, especially since, again, you have your commander to actually help you with that, too. And again, with the absurd amount of mana that you can actually utilize with this commander, the absurd amount that you can actually make again once you're set up properly with something like that Krark Clan Ironworks, I mean, it's definitely not, you know, crazy to think that you could actually get your commander out again, get it to your graveyard in a certain way. And we'll talk about, you know, some ways here in a bit, and then exile it again from your graveyard to just do things again and again and again. And yeah, this commander, again, I think has a ton of potential, especially when paired with things like these. I mean, face reward, even better in Second Sunrise in certain circumstances. Return to the battlefield all permanent cards in your graveyard that are put there from the battlefield this turn. So yeah, essentially by stacking up a couple of different ways to, you know, do this again and again and again, maybe some ways to actually get these cards back again to actually be able to do them again, you can do some pretty absurd things. And of course, like I mentioned, I mean, one of the key components to this commander with this kind of a build is to actually get your commander into your graveyard. There are plenty of great ways to do that. I mean, Perilous Research is a way that you can do it. Very simply, draw 2 cards and sacrifice a permanent. Cool. Very low to the ground draw spell that also, again, has a downside, quote unquote, with that sacrifice a permanent, but it's actually an upside for this deck because we actually want our commander in our graveyard. Or at least I should say, again, once we're set up, we do. We definitely might want to utilize, you know, that static ability. We'll talk about that here in a bit, though. But yeah, Ashnod's Altar, another card that can be incredibly impactful in a deck like this. Sacrifice a creature, add colors to your mana pool. So again, now even our commander can be sacrificed for mana to actually utilize its ability and to be able to utilize other abilities and cast other spells. Yeah, there's a lot of value. There's a basically value engine that you can really set yourself up with and have an impactful turn that is very much game ending. And speaking of creatures and creatures that can either, you know, be utilized with your commander's ability or, you know, be sacrificed with Ashnod's Altar or whatnot, yeah, you can make a ton of them that can be incredibly impactful with cards like, you know, Sai Master Thopter, Sufficient Construction, even Mirrored and Besieged. Sai says whenever you cast an artifact spell, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying, and by paying 1 in a blue and sacrificing 2 artifacts, draw a card. So this one can actually draw you some cards. You can use it to sacrifice artifacts to get in your graveyard. Maybe if, you know, they have some triggers like that implement, great, you get extra card draw as well. And of course, yeah, you can make a massive army throughout the game by getting all of your tiny artifacts into play. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, you're making a Thopter, which of course, I mean, not right away unless you have, you know, a way to give your creatures haste. You can use at some point to start surveilling to mill yourself even further to get more artifacts in your graveyard. And yeah, I mean, Efficient Construction basically is the exact same thing as that first part. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, you get a 1/1 Thopter with flying. Again, still just very valuable in a deck like this to be able to help, you know, fill your board with a ton of creatures, which can help you out in a variety of ways. Or how about Mirror and Besiege, which actually gives you an option. When it enters the battlefield, you choose Mirror or Phyrexian. If you choose Mirror, whenever you cast an artifact spell, you get a 1/1 colorless Mirror artifact creature token. So again, you can make a ton of those to help you, you know, surveil a lot. Or you can choose Phyrexian. Beginning of your end step, draw a card, then discard a card. Then if there are 15 or more artifact cards in your graveyard, target opponent loses the game. Yeah, you're in an eggs deck. There are definitely going to be times where you can easily get 15 artifacts into your graveyard. So you can take out opponents with this if you really want to, or again, just utilize it to make a massive army. But speaking of massive impacts, well, Grinding Station. This card can be absurd with this kind of a deck. Tap, sacrifice an artifact, target player mills 3. So yeah, we're going to want to be able to mill ourselves and yeah, or, you know, mill our opponents at a certain point to be able to take them out. But to start things off, yeah, we're probably going to mill ourselves to get even more artifacts in our graveyard. And on top of that, whenever an artifact comes into play, you may untap Grinding Station. We're going to get this trigger an absurd amount of times with a deck like this. We can very easily, again, fill our graveyard a ton, you know, cast something like a Second Sunrise or a Face Reward after sacrificing a ton of artifacts, or again, using our commander's ability from our graveyard to do that too. Get a lot of artifacts into play, get this trigger a lot, sacrifice those artifacts again, or sacrifice different kinds of artifacts, and mill, you know, either ourselves even more to get more options for us, or to mill our opponents. And speaking of milling though, how about Battered Golem? It doesn't untap during your untap step, but it's going to be untapping quite a bit with a deck like this, because it says, whenever an artifact comes into play, you may untap Battered Golem. Which, you know, this just on its own really doesn't do a lot, even if we can just untap it. Great, but with this commander again, when our commander is in play, that static ability can be huge with this. Again, Vigilance and tap Surveil 1. Yeah, we can mill ourselves a ton with this, or again, set ourselves up for a great draw. In a somewhat similar way, there's Traxos, Scourge of Krug. It says, when it enters the battlefield, it enters tapped, and doesn't untap during untap step, but whenever you cast a historic spell, untap Traxos. And historic spells, of course, count, artifacts, legendaries, and sagas, and yeah, we're going to be casting a ton of tiny artifacts with a deck like this, so we can very easily untap this and mill ourselves a lot throughout the game with this. Speaking of untapping, how about Draw Scorpion? Whenever it or other artifact creature is put into a grave from play, you may untap target artifact. Now, this might not really seem like all that much, but oh my goodness, once you're set up, this can be absolutely bonkers. I mean, okay, let's just, again, say that we were building up an army with one of those cards like, Sai or whatnot. We're making a bunch of artifact creatures. And again, maybe we've got like, Ashnod's Altar, where we can sacrifice some creatures for free. Cool. We sacrifice creatures for free. We get a lot of mana. We untap artifacts, which of course can let us do a lot of things. I mean, maybe we're untapping ones to actually help us surveil more, get more cards into our graveyard, or maybe we're untapping a mana rock to give us even more mana. Draw Scorpion can make a massive impact. I mean, even just untap spells like Dramatic Reversal, which obviously is a very, very good card in a lot of situations. But yeah, this one's like, hey, all those non-land permanents you have, untap all of them. So that's all of your artifacts, all of your creatures. Yeah, there's a lot of just great situations that this can really be impactful in. Vitalize, in a somewhat similar way, says untap all creatures you control. So this doesn't untap, all your other artifacts that aren't creatures. But still, again, when you have a commander that has a static ability that lets you just mill yourself a ton, and you really, really are incentivized to mill yourself a ton, just utilize those creatures essentially again to mill yourself even further. Speaking of which, yeah, Unwinding Clock, decently expensive card. Untap all artifacts you control during each other player's untap step. There's a reason why it's expensive. And of course, this works very well in this kind of a deck, again, when you can make a bunch of those, artifact creature tokens, or just have a bunch of artifact creatures in play that can, tap to mill yourself. Well, just have fun just milling yourself even further, untapping your mana rocks for more mana, just doing a lot of crazy things when this is in play. But now as this episode is coming to a close, it's time for me to give you my final thoughts on this brand new exciting commander. And actually, I guess I just said it's exciting, so yeah, my thoughts are this is an exciting commander. There's a lot of interesting things that you can do with it. And of course, there's a lot of different directions that you can take this commander. You do not have to go eggs. That being said, yeah, eggs can be a very powerful deck with this kind of a commander, because again, it essentially is that, again, face reward type of card in a way where you can get a ton of artifacts back out into play for free to continue on your absurd turn. And once you're set up properly, again, with something like a Krark Clay and Ironworks, it's going to be very, very difficult to stop you, essentially with your commander being able to get, 10 artifacts back, essentially, that can each draw you a card or give you some other kind of a benefit. And you're getting other kinds of benefits, too, again, when those come into play or whatnot are sacrificed. Yeah, there's a lot of crazy things that you can do with this one, and I think a lot of players out there are going to be really excited about it, for different reasons again. Not all of them are going to be eggs players, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised in the future if I end up seeing Alec on the other side of the table with this one. But if you are one of those excited players, make sure you check out that card list link in the description below, and also make sure you stay tuned to this channel for even more exciting quick takes and spoilers coming up. And with that, the show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.